in the not the waiting room, but the public aspect of the meeting. It looks like he looks like he's in there.
Okay. And I'm looking for our guest speaker from SAP, I guess. Have you
He's in
seen
there.
him, Steve?
Is that Andrew?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's in there as well, the attendee.
I'm just going to go ahead and bring everybody over.
Okay.
Is that all right?
And
Yes.
great. I know that Andrew doesn't have a camera, so he'll be presenting his slides and we'll never know what he looks like.
What's his title again?
He's in the facilities department at SAP. They're responsible for the building, the real estate, energy consumption, a range of stuff. So he's over there. He's the assistant manager.
Okay.
All right, if you're ready, Bruce, I'll give quick instructions on public comment and then we can get
Sure.
started. So this is again a virtual meeting for the township. This is the EAC meeting. We'll be taking public comment tonight. You can raise your hand during the Zoom meeting and be recognized. And you could do that either on your screen or by phone if you know the codes to do that. If by chance you're having trouble with that, or if you just want to make public comment in writing, you can send public comment to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. Again, that's publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. If you are going to do that, we ask that you please include your name and address in the public comment. Also, if you're having trouble and you send in and you want to actually speak and you're on just by phone, please make sure you give the phone number so I know which phone number to bring up for public comment. As always, you can also make public comment in the blue drop box at the front of the building, which is always checked prior to meetings. Bruce, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. This is the call to order. And the first thing I'll do is take a roll call. Cindy Mahalo.
Here.
Sheila is not here, I know that. Harry Bryant. I know Harry's here.
Harry's on mute.
He's on mute.
Here.
Just wave your hand, okay. Janet Kravanis,
Here.
Joe Pinto,
Here.
Dane Shoemaker,
Here.
Mike Russo, not here, and Steve Nease.
Here.
Here.
I'm here. Michael Russo's here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. We're next move to a brief moment of silence. Okay. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight's evening. We're at 5.1. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Agenda approved. Next thing is the approval of our minutes from the March 1st meeting. They were included in the distribution of this packet and they're always available on the web. But do I have a motion to accept those minutes from the March 1st, 2021 meeting? Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Next on our agenda is Andrew Kushner from SAP. Are you out there, Andrew?
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all good.
Hey, hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Kushner with SAP out of Newtown Square, the operations manager, assistant facilities manager of the site. Pretty much, I'm the guy that you're going to call if you have any problems, any issues, if you're not comfortable, or right now our phones aren't ringing that much. So I want to say thank you very much for Bruce for inviting me. I think there was interest to kind of hear a little bit about SAP's sustainability, our practices of what we do, how, where are we a fit in talking about sustainability and some of the challenges with 2020 and the pandemic, and some of the things that we were still able to stay agile enough to bring to the table for 2020. And I apologize, I'll be a little slow out of the gate in getting my presentation up, but all right.
Do you have to screen share, Steve, with Andrew?
I think he should be able to screen share. I turned off my screen share, so he should be able to.
You guys
Okay.
let me know if you see my screen.
Okay,
We don't yet.
I think it helps. Usually press the share button when you're done, right?
Yep, there you go.
Okay,
there.
excellent. Let's give you the prettier view of our slide. There we go. So I'll be honest with you guys out of the gate, I didn't create all this content. I did go through a few different batches of information that SAP had and kind of show you how that kind of carries over into our world and my feeling about for the community and how does it benefit in and around the area. It starts at just wanting people to have a better opportunity to help the world run better. It's SAP's drive. I've been with SAP since 2006. And I've never walked away feeling as though SAP never was willing to participate or get involved. When I arrived, our second building was in plan. And I remember going to a local hobby shop, and I mentioned this to Bruce, and people were very concerned about, what was going to change in the area. And the building that we built, which is kind of funny, if you look at it today, it's a LEED Platinum building. You really don't see it beyond the one building that you see from Route 3. That's our building 1. And we actually had the people in and around the area that were working on the campus. So when they came over, we had a new building in 2009 that we had opened our doors. Very unique building. We can talk about that a little bit further down, but again, that's really starts for us in SAP is that sustainability is where we have a fit with the community and how we have a fit with the environment. Sustainability, as far as when I showed up at SAP, it was at that time they wanted to be the exemplar. That was their drive. They wanted to lead by example, and they wanted to be able to do certain things. And over that stretch of time from 06 to 2007, you can started to see the shift of how not only did they want to be the exemplar, but they wanted to be the enabler. How do we get people to join us? How do we drive the program, drive sustainability? And what opportunities can we even bring to the table as being a tech company? So we look at when we deliver back on the sustainability front for SAP, and this is a global program that we're part of. Just so everyone's, to be fair to the global, to the parent company or the global office out of Germany, that was their drive, and they pushed down to us over the years. And Newtown Square was doing things at that time, working on the LEED Platinum building, but they hadn't quite told us that we would be part of this new program. And it was very much way that they were driving us, holistic steering and reporting. It's really a little bit of everything that they're looking into and driving as part of their sustainability program. I won't get into too much. This is a little bit more on the sales front, so I'm going to spare you that, but I'll bring you to this slide here. It kind of shows our journey over the years, again, starting in 2009. I won't read you all the boring verbiage in between, but it's really kind of where we got started. 2012, which is the first integrated report, legal document that we publish, and it's very accurate as far as I've seen. And I'm the person they usually audit before they publish that information. So the ISO 14001 certification for the site. And again, those audits, usually I'm audited once a year. It just depends on who wants to audit me that year. We have internal auditors and we have external auditors. So that I feel as though that really kind of drives us to making sure that we're collecting the right information and how we're tracking. The sustainability dashboard. That's a dashboard that I'm very familiar with, that we actually pulled down all of our consumption, electricity, natural gas, water, any commodity to the site, fuel oil, and that gets tracked month to month and year over year. And that's actually what we report off of. You'll see the slide where it says carbon neutral 2025. This is actually interesting. We've moved the needle on that and not delaying it, but we'll be carbon neutral come 2023. That's our new goal. We tackled last year, as an example, maybe we took a little bit of opportunity being facility folks, but we took the opportunity to go plastic free. There's no single-use plastics on our campus. And I'm sure that I'm going to hear about it once folks come back to the office, but I think right now everyone's just wanting to come back. So we're looking forward to seeing that group come back in. Part of the challenge, right, because SAP at Newtown Square, because we're part of this ISO program, I've been asking questions, how do we gauge our efforts? How do we gauge our targets and our goals? Because it's usually a year over year level of effort. But 2020 was unique. 2020 with having no one on site, you're not feeding people, so you're not having any type of waste to get rid of. The daily trash, the electricity consumption, all those numbers, really, we had to make sense of it. So not that we mark it off and saying, well, we've reduced. I've been there for about 14 years now, and I can tell you that they do not, they do not take kindly to opportunity passing them by. With that said, in the pandemic hitting, we actually took a step back and said, okay, what could we do to help drive some of our targets? We knew 2020 for us was a year of getting rid of the single-use plastics. So we started there. We also had interest to really run more efficiently. One of the goals was find a solution that could really impact how the business ran day over day. And one of the things we looked at in building one was the fluorescent lighting. We switched that out to LED, and it already had daylight harvesting controls. There's more control with the current system that we're installing. So that'll replace all of the first building's fixtures. And so it's more than just a relamp. It's a tech upgrade or update, as well as implementing the LED solutions that we have there. Again, just to show you over time, we've really progressed, and SAP so far, not that I've seen, they don't have any interest to stop. I could tell by the requirements that they're throwing us year over year, and I truly believe that's because it's backed by our global board. They very much speak to the need to be sustainable. When I started at Newtown Square, we had a challenge. We took away bottled water, and my manager at the time said to me, well, welcome to SAP, and your first job is going to be to find a way to detach people from bottled water. And I asked him a very simple question. I said, well, what did you give them? Because he already tried and it blew up. And the bottom line was, well, he says, well, what do you mean? I said, what did you do? What did you do to say, hey, look, this is, did you get executive endorsement? Did you have your manager, whoever at the time, and it was a guy by the name of Rick Knowles, who I said, have you talked to him? I said, because he's the guy who's going to be able to back you up in the conversation and say, hey, this is the direction we're moving. I'd say 06, 07 was a little bit of an eye opener for some folks who didn't maybe believe in sustainability. And they pushed us forward with the requirements. So bottom line, I ended up getting everyone a stainless steel water bottle. And I said, here's what we're giving you guys. This is what we're going to be using now. Brand new water coolers, mobile filters, UV, blue light, filters the water down to nothing. We put those in, we upgraded the pantries. Now they're accepting it and going, okay, yeah, I get it. This is the new business model. We're not dealing with bottled water. And having that executive management really over time has really helped us along the way. And the SAP aims for the plastic-free ocean. Again, we're really challenging some of these locations. I think they took a look at us first because we own the site and we can make that change. Sometimes you work in a leased property where you have to get buy-in from your landlord if you want to make some type of change. Again, this is the holistic approach. All of our data is basically tracked. I have annual meetings with the executive lead for sustainability at Newtown Square. I can tell you he's quite active. He's a great person to be able to work with. Rick Knowles, who was the previous executive who held that spot, had left, and I was in desperate need of finding someone. And before 2020, I'd always remember seeing this guy who'd walk into the cafeteria. He had lots of people surrounding him, lots of people laughing. And I jokingly said, this is the guy that we need. I need somebody who's going to kind of bring people to the table and help them understand. And sure enough, Rick leaves. This other guy, Bjorn Gansworn, has taken on that spot. And his first opportunity was just I guess it would be the February timeframe last year. It was a very cold morning and we were talking about plastic and how bad it was. He was freezing outside. He wasn't complaining. He was greeting everyone as they were coming into the building that day and telling them, explaining to them, why is it so important that we get plastics out of our business? And again, this comes down to what our targets are. Mentioned that carbon neutral 2023. They've made that change. They've made that commitment. For 2021, as an example, we're reducing our CO2 footprint. We have a few projects with the lighting project upgrade that we're working on. The south side of our building 1 has been tinted, just enough to drop that heat load and the weight of the sun off of the building, so the buildings run more efficiently. They're not running at full tilt. During a hot summer day, it's nice to be able to shed some of that weight from the sun. But driving by, you couldn't even notice that we actually did that. So that's going to benefit. They talk about zero waste, phasing out single-use plastics. I'm pretty sure all sites that were in the program as of last year have already successfully achieved that. Anyone who was in that 14,001 program. And this just gives you a little bit of insight to what we're looking at. And e-cars, we do have e-stations on our campus. We encourage people to, invest into an e-car. So when they get to work, as a perk for the employee driving in, they can plug in their car and charge up and be ready to go before they leave. And this gives you a little sense of also where we came from and going through the process. These are the ESG ratings. They're environmental ratings that actually show you how well we're performing in that arena of being sustainable. Again, this is just some of the commitment that we've made over time, and whatever I see us going in the next few years, we've partnered with a group called GoodR. They actually will come to our site back when we were open and fully staffed. At the end of the day, they would take our leftover food, our lunches that we had left over and things that we couldn't find a way to repurpose. And they work with the local community in finding opportunities to land that food. For us, that for me, it means a lot. I know our team, it means a lot. Means for us is that we're not putting it in the landfill. We're actually getting that to someone who's in need. They do the same thing with IT, with some of their programs and their equipment programs that they run. There's always an opportunity to repurpose, and we try to find that. Some of the furniture in building 2 was all repurposed furniture, so it was not newly manufactured. We actually just had it reskinned, and that was back in 2009. So, but yeah, SAP as a whole, for this year, some of the things that we're working on, SAP has 3 points of interest this year. One would be reduction of waste. And that could be anything. It could be e-waste. That could be your traditional waste. We have a commitment to reduce our water consumption. And right now I'm actively looking at a cistern that we have behind our second building that I'm looking to see how I can make that more efficient. Use that rainwater to get it further out into the landscape. A few years ago, we had a project that was at the front of our building, and it was redoing our motor court. And it just how things were designed back then, how they came to be. We had lots of water that was going, that was ponding, and we knew there would be a better way to actually repurpose that. Some of that water is going out to a storm basin. However, we did install some rain gardens in the front of our motor court. Our canopy, as you walk into our building, actually collects the rainwater. That goes back to that cistern that I had mentioned. But I'm looking to do more with it for this year. And yeah, so that's kind of where SAP is. It's definitely a sustainable team, definitely minded in that direction. We even have something called a giving garden. To keep that short, it's kind of, that's where it is for us. It's food to be able to give back to the community. Yes.
Oh, is that me?
Yes, Harry.
Oh, well, this is a little bit off point, but I'm just sort of curious. I take it most of your workforce in Newtown Square is working remotely now?
Yes, sir.
It's working out well.
Working out very well. We did a pulse check of our campus and said, hey, what are you guys interested in coming back? There's definitely some part of that people need. I think what's holding people back and reserving people from saying, I want to come in just yet, is everyone wants to get the shot in their arm. I think that's really going to be the next hurdle to get people through. We did try a soft reopen last year. That went really well. We reclosed, we only opened for about a month. And the only reason we closed was because Governor Wolf had recommended that everyone, if you work electronically, telephonically, if you don't have to go there. So we agreed to say, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And we shut our doors again. You can find me at Newtown Square once a week as the rest of my team, and we're just keeping the business going. But as far as the people coming back, I see people wanting to come back sooner than later. I'm sure a little bit of a sanity break from staying at home, a different place, get to interact with people that you work with.
So you think most folks, you anticipate most of your workforce will be in the office 5 days a week when all this sort of settles down?
Yeah, I do. And the reason I say that is with the folks that I've spoken to outside of the facilities world, the folks that I've spoken to are really, it's one of the things I think that over time that I've seen that at least we do fairly well. And we give an opportunity for folks to get together and collaborate. And there's a certain amount of collaboration you can do electronically. But I think some of it, like we have an experience room, which it's hard to think of, okay, you're going to put people into a room. That's probably not a good idea. But it's again, how do we get back to being the business that we were and we knew? It'll be interesting. I think once we kind of reopen our doors again, I think folks are willing to come back in and spend some time with us.
Andrew, how many folks work at SAP in Newtown Square?
Roughly about 2,500.
Okay.
Andrew, my name's Leonard Altieri. I'm one of the township supervisors here in the township. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and present what SAP is doing in terms of their sustainability. I have two questions. The first one is what sort of initiatives does SAP have with regard to getting involved in Newtown Township and the school district, if any?
I'm not familiar with as to what they do. That's not my backyard.
Do you have a contact person that you'd be able to give to us? Because obviously in the township, we're going on multiple environmental initiatives moving forward, and to have SAP as a partner in a lot of that, I think would be not only helpful, but appreciative of being a good neighbor. I also know that there's a growing interest in the school district as well. So if you have a colleague that you can point us to, I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with them.
Well, we actually, I think what you're saying, we had a program, but the program kind of got disconnected with this pandemic. I would say within the community, the years I've been there, we have had schools come to us and say, hey, we want to take our folks through your campus and take a look at things and show them what you do. The other building has ice chambers in the basement, 16 of them. And these things are pretty tall. Now, what that program is going to look like as we move forward, but I can definitely dig in and see who I can find. I
appreciate that. And then the second one, and I have a strong inkling this is going to be outside of your wheelhouse, but with your title, I suspect that you have multiple meetings with other high-ranking individuals in SAP. We have and I'm going to take this opportunity to just say this, but we are constantly being subjected to a completely, what I would say, inappropriately loud generator in the township. The neighborhood of the Heights, the neighborhood of St. Albans are constantly being subjected to this train-like generator that kicks on at the slightest power disturbance. We have reached out to SAP numerous times. In my opinion, SAP has given us an not adequate answer into how they're going to rectify the issue. Now, full disclosure, look, when power goes out, you're talking about your North American headquarters, that's your cloud, I get that. But just a power disturbance that then causes that generator to go on for 10, 12 hours, I think we can all agree it's probably not a great use of fossil fuels to be running that long, and also the noise pollution that gets created to the township. So if you can just kind of, again, the township's been working on this, just nudge your colleagues to kind of come up to a solution on something, again, to show that SAP is being a good neighbor, because the mindset of some residents who again are subjected to that noise pollution time and time again is that their complaints are falling on deaf ears. So I just wanted to kind of raise that with you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity of you being here today, and I look forward to that contact information that you can give to us.
Oh, absolutely. What I can share with you real quickly about that, I know that they've had several groups through that have done sound studies. I know they've added baffling in and around the generators. I don't know where that got left off, but I guess would you be sending me your contact info, or so I can get you over to the right person?
I can send the emails out with your mutual addresses on it.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah. I noticed something, Andrew, is the data center is all renewable energy?
Yeah, well, it's a program that's fostered by our global team.
Mm-hmm. Because data centers are pretty big consumers of electricity, right?
Yeah, well, I think it all depends on how it was designed and what efficiencies they've changed around. Mm-hmm. Like our data center originally, when I started, they had cracked units, different type of cooling, more traditional. We switched over to more crawl units. We're exercising more hot cold aisles. When I started there about 3 years in, we actually did a plenum program in our data center. We're actually, instead of allowing the exhaust coming off the equipment, basically recirculated that up into the ceiling. And it would come back through and just go, instead of dumping that hot air back into the space that you're trying to cool. But that's changed so much over the years. They actually have it down to a science where the lighting on our data center floors aren't even turned on unless you're actively engaging the floor.
Another question, and that has to do with finances. This cost, it may cost you more to have an environmentally correct solution than having the easy traditional solution for something. It sounds like SAP is willing to spend the incremental amount of money to for the sustainability efforts.
I believe so. I know you really have to demonstrate the opportunity and ensure that, back when I started, they were looking at solar panels. Mm-hmm. We looked at a solar array, but if you look at the size of the campus, what was the amount of electricity that we'd be able to get into the building with that solar array? It was such a small amount that would be able to bring itself back in. And at that time, it was a significant, let's say, spend. We did have our team in Palo Alto. They're running with solar. They have a larger EV farm than we do, charging station, more folks out on the West Coast that are driving around in electric cars. But yeah, it's as long as you make your case, I've never seen them say no to an opportunity that made sense for the business.
It also sounds like, Andrew, that you use this as a competitive differentiator for SAP. It looks like your slides are presented in a sales function sometimes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm a bad sales guy. I'm not in the sales. Never have been. Never will be. Sold cars for 3 months, and I was good at it, but I just didn't like selling. I got out of it, and I decided to go into the crazy world of facilities. So.
Well, you're selling there too, I think.
Well, it's for me, I think it's very much about the passion of our team and what we've really kind of acknowledged where we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
We have a sustainability team aside from myself and that executive manager support that we had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We have an entire team of sustainability champions. The Giving Garden, that's an opportunity that people take time out of their day. Versus, let's say, SAP hiring a landscaper to roll through and turn soil and drop stuff in and harvest it.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that the team is very dedicated, and the folks that I know will spend more of their time when their day is done. And we actually work with the local farmer markets and being able to get our foods out, to get our produce out. So it's definitely very passionate about what we do, for sure. When it comes to sustainability.
Do we have any other questions from the group here?
Oh, let me ask about the farmers market. Are you aware that Gather in the Circle is doing a farmers market this summer, starting in June? Has anyone reached out to you about participating in that?
Oh, no, I haven't heard directly. Maybe someone else may have been reached out to already, though. Unfortunately, my team's a little disconnected. As close as we are, we jump into our meetings, but most of us are project driven right now. So
when Bruce gives me your contact information, I'll include that information because with Janet, I'm on that farmers market committee. So I'll make sure you get that information, Andrew.
all right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Andrew, you could sell some of those vegetables you grow on your property.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's the funny part is that they actually the group that takes it, they actually deliver right to food banks.
Mm-hmm.
That goes right to food banks. That's not we definitely, the folks there, we don't sell. We partner with a group called Trellis for Tomorrow. Prior to that, they were called Triskelis. They helped us get our raised beds together and actually get us to where we are today with the program.
Other questions?
Now, who helped you with getting the beds together? Because the township is planning a community garden where people can rent a individual, it's not a square, but a rectangle. And so that is not off the ground yet, but in the works. And maybe we could use some support there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trellis for Tomorrow, the fantastic group. They've really helped us. As a matter of fact, 2020, because of the pandemic, our garden on campus was actually closed because the site was closed. And for the sake of safety, I didn't want to have people coming and going and not knowing really what was the best approach. So I reached out to Trellis for Tomorrow, and they were able to partner with other areas that had local beds that were open. And basically all the things that we were planning for that year were moved over to, I think it was in Pottstown, I think was the closest one they could find. And normally we were about 2,000 pounds a season. They hit 1,500 pounds, if I remember correctly. So when I met with them this year, I challenged them. I said, look, I'm going to push you harder. I need more bed space. What could you do? So they're finding more bed space for us. So we're hoping to get our numbers back up to about 2,000 pounds this year.
And how do you spell that company or organization?
Trellis, TRELLIS, the number 4. Tomorrow.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So I have a question for Andrew.
Yeah.
This is Cindy Mahalo. I'm vice chair or co-chair of the EAC. You mentioned that you have a number of very dedicated employees who are called sustainability champions.
Mhm.
And I wondered if you also have employees that get involved in community service projects, because throughout the course of any year, we have different opportunities for community service here in Newtown Square, whether it's helping with a tree planting or building a rain garden or things like that. And we would love to engage employees from local employers. And I wondered what kind of opportunities there might be to partner with SAP on that.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is we have our month of service that happens around the month of October. Because of our group is a little bit more inbound from, let's say, the tri-state area. I used to be a resident of Pennsylvania for many years. I've relocated to Delaware since. You have folks coming in from New Jersey and PA. So SAP in those programs, they try to find things that might be able to reach from where that person's located or in and around the community. So they do have a program like that. And as I said, usually happens in the month of October.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when they have that month of service, are you saying that employees tend to get involved in where they live?
SAP structures the program around the month of service. So that's unfortunate. I'm not part of that group that fosters that effort. It may be a combination of HR and a few other groups.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question, and it'll be my last question, Andrew, is do you guys do anything to promote sustainability practices for your employees at home?
And that's actually the drive we're taking in this year. Because of, I think I've mentioned about the fact that there's no real change in numbers as far as utilities and things that you can improve over time because we have empty buildings. There's no way to gauge that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversation was started, how do we get folks engaged at home? Maybe either reinforce something they already know, give them a challenge. We quite haven't figured out the playbook yet. But there is an active conversation, and every ISO certified location is required to, for the year, come up with a solution for that. You know, how is it that you handle that?
Any other questions?
I was just going to mention that, you know, just for everybody's kind of benefit, that all the cubicles that we have on the second floor here were actually cubicles that SAP had used. And then the carpet that's on our floor was also carpet that came out of an area that SAP was no longer using on the campus over there, not in their current building, but in one of the other buildings where they were. And so, I mean, there are a lot of things that do get reused from them, and they've offered those things up over the years. And so it's just another place that we've been able to take advantage of that.
Great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, SAP.
Okay.
Well, it's definitely one of the things we try to do whenever we touch a project. Usually the first conversation is, well, where does it go?
Yep.
Where does it go? Because if it's going to go to a landfill, and my approach to it is I'd rather hire a recycler to come through, drop a few bins behind my building, fill them up, make a phone call when they're done, and let them take it to a yard where they're going to strip it down and sort out all the parts and pieces. And there's a lot of recouping and recycling that can go through in just that small step. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you're fortunate enough, you could really offset your spend entirely with the cost of the value and the materials they separate. If you remove, let's say, cabling from a building, well, there's copper in that cable. There's a lot of money that's wrapped up in that that'll offset that cost, and it'll never go to a landfill. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew.
Andrew, I have
Okay, never mind.
Can I ask a quick question, Bruce?
Yeah.
Andrew, I'm wondering the no plastics on campus. How did you guys get that program started? Was it just a quick get rid of all the plastics, or was there incremental steps that you took?
No, because it happened. Well, put it to you this way: 2020 was the planned year to have it happen. my opinion, it forced the hand, the pandemic forced the hand of it, because basically you get everyone out of the building and the site's closed. You've got no one saying no.
Okay.
It was just, this is going to be the new norm. And I think that's the days of trying to get buy-in, I think are time long gone. I think it's a here and now conversation, and this is the move. SAP being sustainable, and we're stepping up, and hey, this is the opportunity. If you don't like what we have to offer you, then maybe bring some silverware from home, or find another solution. I mean, hey, it's a great opportunity for anybody who comes through SAP. You're treated well, you have a great cafeteria, great experience, great opportunities to meet other people. And if you're hung up on a plastic fork, spoon, and knife, I want to meet you.
All right, Andrew, we all appreciate you joining us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me, guys, and look forward to sharing any information that I have downstream. But thank you again, and have a great evening.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
The next, the agenda is kind of out of whack. I mean, the agenda says public comments next, when in fact we're going to talk new business next. And I only have one thing on new business, which is I received prints for proposed construction, and I lack the expertise, lack the time, and feel like I'm not getting involved soon enough. And it makes me wonder what role we can play to review these pending proposals. I don't know if we can work to develop a better understanding as to what the zoning is for environmental projects that impact the environment. But I'm open for thoughts on what role we can play in that approval process with the Planning Commission.
Would it fall under the codes that are written for the township?
Yeah, the developers have to adhere to those codes.
Right.
But oftentimes there are situations where they can't, the proposal has to, or does not, or has some code violations that they want some relief on.
Well, Bruce, a couple thoughts. What is the specific plan that you received now that's the most recent one?
I'm looking at a plan for Episcopal Academy's guardhouse right off of 252.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and is this, I think there's several things. First is process. We've talked about this before with the township about what is the process for us actually as the EAC being included in the whole flow of these materials and making sure that we do receive it at the right time and in the right format. So that's one thing, is the process. And then the second issue that you raised, which we've talked about before as well, is our proficiency at being able to correctly assess what it is we're looking at. So I think the first thing is we've got a supervisor and the township manager on the call. Is, maybe offline or after the call, we could work with them to make sure that we're getting the materials in a timely manner. And then my second thought about the proficiency is two things. There's the aspect of understanding the codes, which is incredibly confusing. And my go-to person is Kathy Spar, who is involved in the township codes. And she has very patiently explained on several occasions to me what the process is, the flow of the documents, which bodies they go to, the different routes that they take, depending on the particulars of the site development. So I'm thinking, could she provide us an orientation session at one of our meetings? Could she give us a documentation of what's the typical approval process, like a little cheat sheet or a reference that we could have for like the standard types of site development plans that come through, if it's a small residential one, if it's a larger commercial one, so that we have that as a reference. And then secondly, to understand what it is we're looking at, I know other EACs have had engineers give them, little tutorials, like maybe we dedicate one of our meetings to having someone from Stantec, it doesn't have to be Eileen, it could be her assistant, just show us, what are the usual components of a site development plan. Sometimes there are multiple pages, multiple schematics of, which ones should we look at from our perspective. So I think those are kind of three tangible things we could do to address the situation.
I would say that one of the reasons why you have this plan now is because of the request to have it. It is prior to the Planning Commission meeting. So we got this officially probably, maybe if it wasn't last week, it was the week before. And so it will be on the Planning Commission's meeting this month. And so, which is probably about as early as we'll get it and then be able to get it to you. I mean, that's pretty typical in the flow process. I had been aware of this project for a little bit longer than that. They came in and met with staff, started the process with us. But this is just now the official document that's been submitted. And that's why it's been shared with you for your review.
Steve, I have a really stupid question. Where I'm looking at the plan and I'm seeing a big sweeping curve.
Yes.
Where is, for example, the front entrance? I just don't see.
So the front entrance sits, can you see my, you probably can't, let me go over here.
I can't see your cursor.
So if you're looking here, if you can see where my hand is, that's the entrance coming off from the St. David's Circle.
Right.
You come in and come down, and I'm doing this looking at two screens and I'm having a hard time. But this area right here will be where the guardhouse is put in.
Okay.
And then in addition to the guardhouse, they're putting some additional parking in right here.
Right.
Okay. The idea being that they're, it's really a pretty small project for what they normally do, but really the plan is set to, once school has started, once their day, and when I say school started, their day has started, not during the drop-off period, but once they get past that point, they will close the gate and anybody coming in will have to stop at the guardhouse to go in. During the drop-off period, they're not slowing any traffic down. They're not changing anything like that, but they are wanting so that, just to kind of during the school day while the kids are there or after hours, there's a way to kind of control who's going on campus and who's not. The additional parking is being put in because they have an actual issue with parking related to the games and things like that. This parking is being added in that area. What you see on this particular plan shows you the added trees that are being planted. Let me see if I can if you can see where my cursor is, these are actually additional trees that are being put in, and it comes down here, and there's a legend as to what that is, and you can see what type of tree. It's a canopy tree, some evergreen trees, those things are being set up as how they're doing that. And that was what was being sent over to you. This particular one, they're using and doing a minor adjustment to the existing detention bond to handle the storage of the water, of the stormwater, or temporary storage of the stormwater until it would be then able to go through. And that's down here in this area right here.
So Steve, are the parking spaces that I see off to the right of the guardhouse, are those existing or new?
Yeah, those are all existing.
They're what you use if you go to see a baseball game.
Correct.
Where I park.
So it looks like there's about 40 new parking places going in.
That's probably correct. I haven't counted exactly, but I think that's right.
Yeah.
Is that all impervious?
Yep.
Impervious material?
It is impervious, yes.
And I know that Echo Valley already has a lot of water issues from Episcopal because people there feel that they're not currently handling the existing stormwater properly. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Cindy.
No, that's it.
Well,
before we go down on the plan, before we start discussing the plan, if I can just kind of just piggyback off of what Steve said, actually what Cindy said, and Bruce in regards to the reviewing of the plans, the process, and timing of that. So if you remember when I first got on, one of the things that I asked was that the EAC gets more involved in this. And I think that you guys have done a really good job so far. Case in point, you look at the document that was sent with regards to the Deep Baton property across from Gradyville Road and some of the other projects that you guys have, that this committee has been able to provide position papers on. And I think that it's been extremely helpful. In terms of process, I think Steve's right, is that, and this is from when I was on the EAC back in, 2007, 2008, as soon as the township receives these plans, it is my understanding that we are now sending them directly to you. If we're not doing that, then we'll start doing that for all the plans that are submitted. And this committee will then review those plans and will provide information to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors in the same format that you've been doing it already with regards to those position papers. Cindy brought up a really good point, one that completely skipped my mind, and I think Bruce also did, in regards to training. I like the idea of having someone come in and train the EAC, a brief overview, if you will, or 1,000-foot view of how to read these plans, what it is that you should be looking for, essentially. I'll do my own research to see if there's something that PSATS does. We have decided to also do this with the zoning hearing board, send them out, because we've been pretty upset with some of the decisions that have been coming out of both the ZHB, but also from the court because of issues that the ZHB might have done, but that's being rectified. So that's what I'll do in terms of training. I'll also touch base with Steve if I don't find anything, to see if Stantec might be able to put something together in terms of like a training, half day sort of thing, or a few hours. The only other thing that I did want to add with regards to that is we are, and this might come to a surprise to Steve, but the supervisors have been talking, and we are in the process of evaluating the entire submittal process and seeing how we can kind of rework that. As Supervisor Russo, who I believe is still on the call, has noted a couple of times, it seems in Newtown Township we move pretty fast in the sense that the zoning hearing board gives approval on a Thursday, and then it might be before the Board of Supervisors that Monday, which is sort of uncommon for other municipalities. So we're looking at this. We now have a liaison to the ZHB, which we've never done before because it is a separate and independent legal entity. So we're evaluating that from a supervisor's perspective to see how we can not streamline, I don't think that's the proper word, but how we can set up a system that effectively gives all of these boards and commissions ample time to review everything within the parameters of the MPC, but also ensure that the supervisors have the ample time to coordinate with, whether it's individuals from the Planning Commission or from the EAC to get information on. So that's more of a larger picture that we're looking at. But in terms of the immediate process, Again, if you all are not receiving those plans as they come in, I'll coordinate with Steve to make sure that you get them. The unfortunate thing is that you're going to be getting, I guess, a good amount of paper coming into you. And then in terms of the training, I will start looking and talking to my colleagues in other municipalities to see how they do it for their EAC.
We also have to establish a threshold. The EAC doesn't want to get involved when a guy's putting an addition on his garage or on his garage. So we have to somehow define the project size that or threshold where we fit in and where we don't fit in. Because
Yeah, I think my understanding was that unless it was a land development plan, we weren't going to be submitting it to you.
Okay.
And so, I mean, there might be a project that comes in that we submit to you that you may choose not to make a comment on. You know, it's too small or whatever, and you just might say, we have no comment on this one.
Okay.
But most of the time, if it's somebody just putting an addition on their garage, it wouldn't even come before you because it wouldn't even be a land development. I would make note. I find it interesting what Leonard said with the board was coming up with a plan. Actually, the staff and I have been working on a plan as well to present to the board. So maybe all two will be exactly the same. It'll be great. And so we found
all heads coming together.
all of it coming together. Yeah. So I thought that was good because we realized that we don't like the way it's working either. And so we feel like we've kind of come back and we've taken a look at it. We're actually we hope to have something to present soon too, just to help that way. But I would say that we can definitely take and talk through the whole process. But typically what I would tell you is that when we get a plan in, we're going to submit it to you early on, just about the same time that we're submitting it to our third parties to review. And when I say that, that's typically our engineer. I think everybody knows we've brought in an arborist, and so our arborist will have a chance to review any plans. And then from there, there's reports that will go to the Planning Commission, and that's usually about 3 weeks out from when we get the plans in. And then from when the Planning Commission gets it, we'll be talking about what that distance is from the Planning Commission to when the board gets it. Where it gets a little funky is when there's a plan that comes in that also needs zoning relief, and where that comes in. And we don't have a requirement that you go before planning before you go to zoning, or you go before zoning before you go to planning. And those are probably some of the things that I think Leonard's talking about and we're talking about, trying to come up with just a procedure that things would go in. And so hopefully we could make this a little bit more, and I like Leonard said, it's not really streamlined, just make it a better, clearer path so that everybody knows where it is along the way, and that everybody has a chance to review everything ahead of time.
Yeah, that would be great. And if we could have that in writing, that would be good, because I know I appreciate you explaining it, Steve, but my brain does not retain all that.
No, we will definitely have it in writing, and it'll be, we're going to try to make sure that it's very clear. The ideal thing would be that if the EAC has reviewed a plan, that not only would they be submitting to the board, but that potentially also to the Planning Commission, so that the Planning Commission has those same facts as they're making their recommendation to the board.
Yeah. Just a logistical question here. Bruce, when you received this, was it paper or electronic?
I got it in paper form.
But we're looking at something electronic here. And so I'm wondering, can't we receive these plans electronically? And if the files are large, can't we have them placed on the Dropbox folder that we have set up for the EAC, and that we could just be notified that these files are on Dropbox and then go in and look at them?
The answer is yes.
That would be great, because I know they're really big files, and sometimes I've looked at them and online and tried to zoom in, and my computer has really struggled to look at these very large files.
And you are not alone in wanting paper copy of things, especially when it comes to these plans.
Mm-hmm.
And you do want, or you don't want?
No, I'm saying you are not alone in that wanting paper copies of them. I mean, I am one, and I look at these day in and day out for my job. You can do some of them, I think, electronically, but there's just nitty-gritty details that I'm a very paper-heavy person. So I was just saying, if you request them by paper, don't feel as if you are, being an inconvenience, because it's something that I request fairly often.
Okay, thanks.
Further comments on this subject? Just trying to get us to move along here. Okay, let's move to the next agenda item, which is discussion of Sustainable Pennsylvania. I sent a bunch of material. There's more material than you can read on their website, but what I've spent some time with the document. I sent the spreadsheet that the township folks took a look at. And let me tell you some of my takeaways from the Sustainable Pennsylvania criteria. It's a broad program. I saw 132 different elements of the program, where they'd be evaluating the operation of the police department, township finances, public works, parks and recs, as well as environmental initiatives. So there's about 132 elements, of which 35 have environmental implications, and we'll be playing some role in addressing those topics. So I think that it's pretty inclusive for the township, and it's very inclusive for us as an environmental group. The other thing I see when I reviewed it is a list of who we'd be working with on attaining these goals within the list. And it gives us an opportunity to work closer with the Board of Supervisors, the Historical Society, Planning, the Business Association, our finance organization, Parks and Recs, Police, and Public Works. So if we decide to pursue this program, I think it will broaden our ability and improve our ability to connect with the other committees. Let's see. Where I'd like to be after we wrap up the discussion is to be in a position to give this thing a thumbs up or a thumbs down, so that it can be taken to the supervisors for consideration with or without our endorsement. Does that seem like a reasonable goal? Can we get this done in the next 15 minutes?
I think so.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, the spreadsheet I sent out is one of those spreadsheets that can't be printed. It's 30 columns wide and like 110 columns deep. So it's virtually impossible to print. But I've stripped it down a little bit and made it a little easier for me to take a look at. And I can, if necessary, send a stripped down version for you that is in fact printable. But it's very similar to the criteria that was distributed earlier. Do people recall seeing that criteria that I sent out about a week and a half ago? Anyway.
I looked at the one that you sent out just like Sunday, I think it was.
Yeah, I sent that.
I
Right.
a line by line review of the one you sent this week.
Wow. You're patient, Cindy.
Well, I scanned for the EACs.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I said, find all the EACs on the spreadsheet, and that's how I got the number of 35 entries. And we don't own full responsibility for any of those entries. We're typically partnering with other groups, the committees that I had mentioned.
So may I ask where Ready for 100 stands?
I don't know what that is.
Ready for 100?
One can't know everything. Can one?
Hold on. That's serious.
The project that we have been working on, Ready for 100.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that. Ready for 100, I see as a subset of what this program would entail. Specifically, I saw a couple items that related directly to Ready for 100. And if we pursue this, some of the work we're doing to gain credits for the various items will help us build what Ready for 100 is all about. And it'll also put us in a position to have it approved, because it is ultimately an element of this full sustainability plan. And for example, let's see if I can find it here. There's a line item on, I won't go through it, but 15A, 15B, 16A, all have to do with auditing the township's use of energy and consumables. Oh, here you go. How'd you do that, Steve?
How'd I do what?
Display that so nicely.
I use my other screen and I pull it up.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I've shrunk this down so that it's just the action item and who we're proposing to be involved in it.
Yeah, and I kind of looked at it the same way. If you could scroll to item 15A and B.
They're right here.
Oh, okay, yeah. But you can see that they have to do with moving the township to more renewable energy. And as I see it, this can be an element of the RF Ready for 100 project.
Yes, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I asked Steve Clark about it, and he said Haverford passed both of them, Ready for 100 and Sustainable Pennsylvania.
No, I've looked around and I see a lot of people that have done that. Fact is, I think most of the RF 100 townships are also sustainable PA townships. Is that your observation, Janet?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I do know they're not mutually exclusive.
No, they aren't. No, they're complementary.
Exclusive, yes, right.
But I think the timing is such that this is on the table and in front of us and has real potential broadly. And I think down the road, I'll say 6 months, we can resurrect the RF 100 initiative and put the resolution in front of the supervisors at that time. So
didn't it say that if you agree to this, that you have to have something on the table in 6 months? I think I read that.
Yeah, you have to have a resolution within 6 months.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That seems short.
You're way ahead of me, Bruce. Are you proposing that we take on the ones that the spreadsheet tags to the EAC, and the township doesn't take on the program as a whole, or does the township take on the program as a whole?
Steve?
Yeah, so the goal would be that we would take the project on as a whole. What we did is, so this spreadsheet, just so you understand, I went through, we're going to be discussing it in staff meeting tomorrow morning with all of the different departments. We've discussed it as a group. We feel that there are some things we're doing already. We think there's some things that we're not doing. So I went back through and said, every one of these, and I say every one of these, there's probably a half a dozen or more that have no assignment at this point, that we need to really sit down and look at who would really be the right person or group. Some of these are assigned to a committee, but they're not yet assigned to a department within the township, because I'm not really sure where that falls. Some of these, when we get into some of the environmental and stewardship issues, we don't really have a department who that's their function. And so it may fall under administration and just fall under me just because that's what makes sense. Or we may look to see where else it might fall, and the staff has to have those conversations. This is a talking spot for us. You may look at these and say, the EAC doesn't want to take on some of these that I've assigned as EAC. You may say that that's not really, we're not the right group. They were the group that, you were the group that I thought was best based on, as I understand, your role and purpose within the township. And from that, for me, one of the thoughts was, if I couldn't assign it to somebody, then we have to really that becomes a more challenging look. But I want to make sure that ideally every item would be assigned to at least a department, a committee within the township, and a responsible person in the township. That's the idea, so that it doesn't, I know in order for this to be impactful and effective, just like if you do Ready for 100 or whatever, we have to have people behind it. We have to have people who are responsible for it. And we have to have people who are making it part of the everyday discussion to move it forward. And so that was the idea to get us started. And so that's how it kind of came out as the initial process.
Has the board or has the board indicated that they're prepared to sign up and stand behind this? Because it's tremendous amount of work.
It is tremendous amount of work. And that's the reason why Bruce is asking for this discussion here, because they're asking for your recommendation before they sign up and say go. And so it's going to be presented on next Monday night. Whether if you guys come back and say, yes, we're definitely interested, we think this makes sense, it's a good way to move forward, it's broad enough to address the sustainability concerns that we're looking at, and it wouldn't eliminate doing Ready for 100 also, but it seemed, when I looked at this, and I had a presentation on this about the same time that we were talking about Ready for 100 at a COG group, which is the Council of Governments here in Delaware County. We were looking at this, and I said, this is probably looking at sustainability from more than just from an environmental standpoint. This is looking at sustainability in everything that we touch. And it makes more sense. It made more sense to me to look at it from that way. And then everything else fits underneath of it. And if it helps us accomplish those things, then that's what makes the most sense.
I feel that this is a very big undertaking. And do we have to vote on it for this coming month?
Here's my thought on the undertaking. All we're doing is recommending whether this is a good idea from our perspective. We're recognizing that the spreadsheet that's displayed right now is a living document. There will be changes made to it based on input from us, whether we feel we can do it or not. Also, some of these items we may not address initially, because the goal is to really move us up incrementally between the various levels of certification that are offered by the Certified Pennsylvania program. So there's some of these that might not be done in any of our tenures, but there'll be others that we consider important and that we can work on.
And to kind of go back off of Steve's response to Harry, if this council comes out and says, this is what we're recommending, then yes, the board will continue to be behind it. Steve, as he said, has spoken to us about it. We're excited for the opportunity. As Janet said, it is a large undertaking, but I think that what we want to accomplish is going to be, to truly accomplish it and have an impact on the environment and on the climate, is going to be a monumental undertaking. And it doesn't rule out us potentially doing Ready for 100 after this gets started. So, again, the board is excited about this opportunity. If this council decides to not go with it, then we'll have a conversation with the Board of Supervisors. But if this council comes out and says, we're endorsing this plan, then just like every other environmental initiative that you have recommended to us, we will run with it with you.
You see, the reason I pause, take a look at 17E.
E?
Recall, and I don't know what the context was. I think it was at a township meeting or something. I said, has the township looked at having a open bid contract for regular waste hauling, not the recycle, but the waste hauling? Because I got 9 trucks coming in my driveway my road every week, and each of them hit 3 households. And it's clear to me that one of the 5,000 waste stations in this spreadsheet is doing that. And the response I got was that the Board of Supervisors believes in free enterprise. In other words, you weren't interested in doing that. And I got to tell you, Len, I think philosophically this is a great thing. I think, by the way, Steve's going to have to hire about 3 more people to make this happen. But it does, in my view, reflect a different philosophy about the role of municipal government than we have historically had. It's not bad. I think it's maybe good, but it's different. And I mean, that's just my perception. And if the board is behind it, I think the EAC ought to be willing to step up and not necessarily pick everyone that Steve has tentatively pushed our way, but pick up a large portion of them and move them. But it's a different world, I think, a little bit to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
I
I
would-
respect, it's good, Steve, you can go first.
I was just going to say, and Leonard might have something else to say. I was just going to say, not everything on here is necessarily going to be 100% accomplished. That's not, I mean, when you look at this, there are a couple of these that I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to accomplish because they don't fall within our realm, particularly when it comes to some housing and things like that.
Right.
The way Pennsylvania government is set as a township, we don't necessarily have control on those. We may look for ways to do it, and by assigning it doesn't mean that it's 100% going to happen, but assigning it means that we're going to look into it and determine whether it's something to be considered. And you're right, there are some things that philosophically that this board may say they're not willing to do, and that may be. And when I say this board, I'm talking about the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
But you know, that's part of the the public process. But one thing I can say is I feel like our board is listening and is looking for ways to make sure that we're moving forward. And when we look at the things, when we go with regards, a lot of these things came up as part of our strategic plan. And so it seems like it all kind of fits together with the direction we're headed as a township anyway. And so
I'm not, Steve, sure, I'm not trying to be difficult. This is for me as a constructive conversation because.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
was gonna-
say the board may choose not to act on some of these, but it doesn't keep us from being in the full program.
So that was one of the points I was going to make. So I'm happy you just got that last one in there. And the other thing too is I don't know if I would say that these are definitely, philosophical differences as much as some of them might just come down to economic differences.
Right.
You can say,
There's some real expenditures associated with some of this stuff.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it comes down to the economic aspect as opposed to a philosophical conversation. I mean, we are moving forward with, when the time comes, an RFP for weekly recycling as opposed to just bi-weekly recycling. We're going to look at both of them. But as Steve said too, and I have this conversation with residents all the time, we are, which I guess is a good thing, not like Congress and not like the General Assembly, where we are much more restricted than what individuals think that we have the power of doing. There are some things we can do. There are some things we can't do. There are other things we wish we could do. And so keeping that in mind, also with the fact of what Steve just said at the end, is that we don't have to achieve every single one of these goals to still be part of this program and still have an impact. But But I think that your point is well taken, Harry. And I think that what we learned when we did the Ready for 100 presentation is that it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in these local decision-making bodies. Haverford Township was the example that was used, where it was a Republican board that passed the Ready for 100 resolution and then sent letters to the Trump administration saying this is what real leadership looks like. So I think it's important to kind of remember that thankfully those sort of partisan bickerings don't really occur here on a local level as they do in Harrisburg or DC.
Good, very good.
If I can chime in, I am in favor of this program. I'm in favor of the township moving forward with it, and I would suggest that the EAC give it its support. When I know you guys are probably sick of hearing me say this, but when I was at the Environmental Advisory Board in Glen Rock, New Jersey, our EAC led the effort to get our township certified under the Sustainable Jersey program, which was very similar to this, that it had multiple levels and that you could achieve over time. So you could progress as your township had the ability and appetite to do so. And it had a number, it was very broad-based, and it had a lot of options, where as Leonard and Steve have said, Newtown Township may not do all these things. We don't need to do all these things. We don't have to do them. You can kind of pick and choose where you want to start, what your township is ready to do, and progress incrementally over time. Now, that said, I don't know if the EAC is ready to take on everything that's listed there tomorrow. But in general, I think that having a framework like this that is so broad-based can be it's nice to have that structure. It's nice to have the guidance. It can be very motivational. And I'm really excited that the Board of Supervisors is interested in considering this.
Yes, I agree in that if the Board of Supervisors is already interested in this, then we should support this plan and look to see which environmental issues that we can have an impact on.
My position.
We have to vote.
My position is that we should support this as well. I think it's the fact that it's an umbrella, the fact that the supervisors have an appetite for this, the fact that it addresses much more than environmental, but gives us, some important and relevant things to work on in our area. So I support it. Joe and Dane, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, for what it's worth, I think it gives, a roadmap, right, to what to focus on. I mean, me being new to the organization and understanding what, where to focus our time, it seems like it gives a pretty clear path. And I see, I think Haverford, you mentioned, is part of the certification, right? And I think Radnor Township as well. So I don't know if there's any other local municipalities, but, it gives us an opportunity to be, a leader in the region as well. So,
yep.
Yeah, I support it.
Okay.
Yeah, I also agree. If for the very least that it gives us a set of goals to attain, and like some of you have pointed out already, it's an immense amount of work, and we probably won't achieve all of it. But it definitely gives us goals to try and attain.
Kind of like a blueprint of where to go.
Yeah, exactly. So Steve, it sounds like you guys have our approval of this.
Yep, it sounds like that.
Great.
So I appreciate that.
Sure.
I would mention, this is going to help drive a couple other things. And Bruce and Wade have been talking, and they presented an idea to me, and I've kind of run it a little bit up the flagpole with the board about creating, basically, I'm calling it a committee of committees. And it's kind of against what I like to call things, because sometimes I think committee meetings aren't always productive. But we have been talking about having a meeting of a variety of committees, and so more, not necessarily every person from every committee, but maybe one or two people from each committee meeting together and trying to move forward. And I see this as one of those initiatives that will require that kind of working together across committee lines, and also to help kind of start defining some of the differences between Shade Tree and you, Parks and Rec and you, and laying out those things so that you're able to stay clear on what the things are that are in your lane and working, but where there are opportunities to overlap, we work together and do that. So this, along with that concept of trying to have some meetings that would allow for township committees to cross over one another and hear what everybody else is doing, will be a part of this. And so we are looking at that as part of moving forward as well. And so that would hopefully help us to achieve this as well, because we'll be looking at bringing, at least the chairs, maybe the vice chairs of several committees together, and even working outside with some of our groups that are trying to do things on behalf of the township. For example, Newtown Square and Bloom, Gather in the Circle, and Historic Society, the library, and the groups that are just trying to do things that benefit our community. And sometimes we're all moving in a direction and we need to be all on the same page. And so the purpose of that will help to bring all of us together.
So Newtown Square and Bloom had sponsored a couple of these sessions in January for a number of years, and it was always very helpful to get every one of the volunteer groups and those that weren't volunteer together and talk about moving the township forward.
So it'll probably meet, we're thinking about once a quarter as a starting. And if it needs to be more often than that, it would be more often than that. But it really is the purpose of just trying to make sure that everybody knows what everybody else is working on and that we're putting energy where it makes the most sense.
Okay, so do we vote or do we have to officially vote?
Yeah, let's officially vote. Janet?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Harry?
Yeah.
Dane? Muted Dane.
Yes.
Okay. And Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Cindy, what about Cindy?
And Cindy, I'm sorry. Cindy,
Yes.
you're without a picture, so that's how I missed you.
Yep.
So there's our vote. We endorse it.
Great. Thank you.
One more thing. We've got a couple more things to cover, but one thing that I wanted to do is give Janet a few moments to talk about the status of the pop-up garden.
Okay, thank you. So our pop-up garden the planning is in the final phase, I would say. I've met with Tyler. They have given us a garden design and also the plants, the native plants that they suggest. I have gone to see Steve Mastardi, given him the name of the plants, and he is making sure that he has those or replacement plants that would be of the same kind. I met with George to go over the location. So the goal is for Public Works to put down the substrate that the garden will go in on. And it'll either be in the parking lot, a few 5 parking spaces in front of the administration building, or it'll be on the corner of Ellis and Bishop Howell. That'll be determined by, I guess, by the weather. Then I have been working with Lisa Jacobs, who did the signage for the last year, and she's been working to get us a online announcement. And in that announcement, we're going to have 2 Zoom meetings. One will be May the 5th. That will be with Mike McGraw, and he is going to be talking about gardening, a wildlife biologist perspective. Learn how to love your garden. And then on the 12th, Vince Smith, the president of Valley Forge Audubon, is going to be talking about his garden conversion, the steps of converting his yard to native plant habitat. So I've been working signage for all the plants, and Willis Town Conservation Trust has volunteered to help us with that signage. One of the things we're going to do is I've invited the young scout who is making bluebird boxes, if he would like to display one of his bluebird boxes in our garden, by the way, which is the opening is May the 8th, and for him to describe what his project is. So he'll have one of his boxes there. I am looking for pots for plants because, as we know, these are not going to be out of their pots and planted there. So if you have some old pots that you don't feel like you need to keep in case they walk away for some reason, if you wanted to drop them off, maybe at the administration building someplace, or
we'll take
or
it.
my place. Okay, good. And so we also have a bird walk planned for May the 8th, which is Big Bird Day, where people from around the world will be sending in what they have, birds that they have seen. And I need to plan, with your help, a photo op for after the garden is installed. And I'm thinking that the garden will be installed on the 6th and the 7th, should be finished by the 7th, ready for its opening. Of course, it's out in the open anyway, on the 8th. So I was hoping that maybe on the afternoon of the 7th, that's a Friday, or the morning of the 8th after the bird walk, which would be about 11 o'clock, I'm going to send out an invitation to all who have been involved in this process. Paul is helping us get volunteers to install the garden when we know that the plant material will be on site. And so that's kind of where I am at this point, but I feel we're moving in the right direction. So the announcements will go out on the website. I've spoken to Suzanne, and she can put them on the website and on Facebook. I have confirmed with Nick for the Zoom dates and how people will be able to log on to the Zoom 5 days prior to the meetings. Cindy's going to help me with co-hosting so that we will kind of help each other through that. Cindy's going to be talking about water quality, and I really want to push the pollinators and how important it is that we plant native plants so that pollinators can use. We have lost about 40% of our pollinating insects in the last, since 1970. So we really need to support our pollinators here. And so, any questions? Oh, Bruce is on mute.
No questions, Janet, but that sounds amazing. You're doing a fantastic job.
Does sound
Well,
good.
thank you very much. It's my passion, so I'm happy to do it.
One other important decision we're making via email is, are we going to do Arbor Day or not? Sheila's willing to run with it. I have my concerns, but let's deal with that in email because a decision has to be made very shortly.
Okay.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment before I bring this meeting to an end?
I just wanted to add that I was asked to serve on Birdtown Steering Committee. The regional area, Bucks, Delaware, and Montgomery County want to see Birdtown continue. So we've had somebody, Heidi, for her name, gotten away from me, has volunteered to take charge of that committee, make sure that Birdtown continues.
Great. If there's no public comment, I'm going to bring this meeting to a conclusion.
Okay, I
You
think
have
it was
a-
very productive.
Carol has her
tonight.
hand raised. Is she?
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to share real quick that I know Marple is doing Arbor Day. When we went to learn how to plant the trees, they just sent, it sounds like it's going to be small but nice, and they have an Arbor Day celebration planned for Friday, April 30th at 4 p.m. at the Broomall Fire Company. And they say that it's a celebration and stewardship of our community forest. And then they also tout that they're proud to be a member of Tree City USA. So just food for thought that they're doing something.
Okay,
Now, Cheryl makes a good point because she and I went to their most recent Arbor Day celebration, which was very delayed. And it was much more of a ceremony where they only planted one tree, and the leader did it as a demonstration and a training. So everybody remained socially distanced. It did not require 50 volunteers. It is a very different approach, but it's another option to do something as opposed to nothing.
okay, we're finished this discussion via email. Steve, I think we're all done.
All right. Well, thank you all, and have a good evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.